Hi everyone, welcome back. We are in Module 2, Topic 2. We are in Lesson 2, starting on page 273. Habits of mind attend to precision. Benchmark percents. A benchmark percent is a commonly used percent, such as 1%, 5%, 10%, 25, 50, and 100%. You can use benchmark percents to calculate any whole percent of a number. They give us this tape diagram here showing us 100%, 50, 25, 20s, and then 10% across the bottom here. It says use a tape diagram to state each relationship. How is 50% related to 100%? So what's 50%? How does it relate to 100%? So think about that for a second. What would you be writing down if you were doing this in class? How does 50% relate to 100%? Did you say 50% is half of 100%? How is 25% related to 100%? Well, 25% is this related to 100%. So just one of these is 1/4 of that length. 25% is 1/4 of 100%. How is 25% related to 50%? So 25% related to 50%. So if I'm just looking at a 50%, how is 25% related to that? So we could say 25% is half of 50%. How is 10% related to 100%? So 10% is, so one of these related to this. One of them is just 1 out of 10, so it's 1 out of 10. So it's 1/10 of 100%. And how's it related to 50%? So in 50%, how many do we have of the tenths? We would have 5. So 10% is 1/5 of 50%. Okay, pause if you need to so you can get that copy down. I'm going to flip the page. It says continue the pattern from the tape diagram. So we're just going to continue on. So how is 5% related to 10%? So 5% related to 10. So if we had 5%, if we broke this down even further, how many 5% would we have underneath one of the 10%? We would have 2 of them, right? So 5% is half of 10%. How is 1% related to 10%? I'm going to zoom in a little bit here. Hopefully I remember to scoot the page around. How is 1% related to 10%? And then how is it related to 5%? So how many 1% would we have in 10%? Right, we would need 10 of them. So 1% is 1/10 of 10%. And what about 5%? 1% is 1/5 of 5%, because you would need 5 of them. Go out just a little bit here. Okay, so now number 3 says use the benchmark percents to determine each value if 600 is 100%. So if 100% is 600, then how much would 50% be? So it's 50% of 600. Most of you can probably get that pretty easily. 50% of 600 would be 300. And what about 25%? I want to kind of flip back here, and I want to kind of label the diagram here a little bit. I'm going to grab a different color so that it kind of sticks out. So if we had 100% was 600, Let's just kind of break it down. The 50% then we would need 300 and 300. Because remember, it needs to be worth 600. So what would each of the 25% need to be for us to have a total of 600 when we get all the way across here? So if we look at the 50%, we know this is 300 from here to here. So each of these would have to be 150. That'll continue all the way across. Okay. 20% is a little bit harder. It doesn't match up exactly with anything right above it, so we need to think about it in relation to the 600. So what would each of these have to be so that when we add them all up, we get 600? Well, let's see if it's 100. 100, 200, 300, 400, 500. So we need a little bit more than that. So there's 5 of them. We were 100 away. So if there's 20 in each of these, 20, 40, 60, 80, 100. So let's think about 120. 120 and 120 5 times should give us 600. I'm going to multiply that right here just to check it. 5 times 0 is 0. 5 times 2 is 10. Put down a 0, carry a 1. 5 times 1 is 5, plus 1 is 6. So that is correct. It is 600. So each of these 20% is 120. Now this one does line up, so I know from here to here is 120, so each of these 10% will be 60. Okay, so let's flip back over and answer our questions over here. So what about 25% of 600? So we said 25% of 600 is 150. I'm going to add the of 600 each time here. And we said equals 150. What was 10% of 600? 10% was 60. So what about 5%? Now this one, we don't have it broken down, but I'm pretty sure we can get to it. So if 10% is 60, and we know 5% is half of the 10, then 5% is half of this 10, so half of 60 is, right, 30. So 5% of 600 equals 30. If we were to break our diagram down a little bit further here, and we have the 5% here, 2 of them, wouldn't they each have to be 30 and 30? Okay. And what about 1%? So we said 1% is 1/10 of 10. So if 10% is 60, then 1% is going to be I want you to think about it. I don't want to just shout out the answer. So if you think about it, if we had each of these 10s was broken into 10 little sections, how much would each of those sections have to be? Right, if we're breaking it down into 1% sections, we would have to have 10 of them. So each of them would be, right, 6. So 1% of 600 is 6. Okay. It says use your calculator to determine the percent of each number. So I want to use the calculator, and I kind of want to do it without the calculator too. So I want to show you something. Okay. And we know of is multiply, right? We've talked about that all year. I have a percent sign on my calculator. I tried to put my regular calculator underneath this document camera, and for some reason, oh, now here I can. Earlier I couldn't see it at all. Okay, excellent. Okay. I still think I'm going to use my calculator, or my phone calculator. I am. I think it's more closely aligned to your school calculator. Okay, we're going to go back to the phone. Okay, so 1% of 28. We know of means multiply. So 1%, so 1, and I'm going to hit the percent sign, of times 28 equals, and we get 0.28. Now I want to think about this for a moment without the calculator. So 1%, how do I write 1% as a fraction? I write it as 1 over 100 times 28. This is what we started the lesson with. If I multiply straight across, I get 28 over 100, which is the same as 28 divided by 100. If I do 28 divided by 100, I get the 0.28. And remember when we said if you're dividing by 100, you're moving the decimal 2 points to the left. Our decimal point started after the 8. 2 points to the left is going to be 1, 2. So in any of these that's 1%, we're really doing 1/100th times whatever number that is. So times 234 over 1. So we get 234 over 100, or we're doing 234 divided by 100. Moving it 2 points to the left, we should get 2.34. So let's try it with using percent sign. So 1% of is a times 1% of 234. 2.34. 1% of 85 hundredths. So it's like 1 over 100 times 0.85 over 1. Multiplying straight across, we have 0.85 over 100, which means we're dividing by 100. We move the decimal 2 points to the left. So that's going to move it here. Let's use a calculator and check. So I'm going to do it both ways here. I'm going to do 0.85 divided by 100, 0.0085. And I'm also going to do the 1% sign, 1% of times 0.85, and I get the same thing. Hopefully you're catching on here. 1% is 1 over 100, right? If you get a 1 out of 100 on a test, you get a 1% times 5.86 over 1. We get a 5.86 over 100 when we multiply straight across. When we're dividing by 100, we're going to move the decimal 2 points to the left. 1 here, 1 more. So 0.0586. Let's just double check that. So we had 5.86 divided by 100, or we had 1% of 5.86, and we get the same thing both ways. Okay, so what about 10% of something? So this is the same as 10 100ths times 28 over 1. Multiplying straight across, we actually get 280 over 100. Now we're going to move the decimal point over 2 places. But notice we go from 28 to 280. If I move it over 2 places from here, I end up with 2.8. I do want to give you a little side note. 10 over 100 is the same thing as 1/10. Right? If you get 1 out of 10 on a test, you get 10%. So if I did 1/10 of 28, I now have 28 divided by 10. Now I'm moving the decimal over just 1 place. I still get 2.8. And you can't see that. I still get 2.8. Showing you this in the calculator. So if I did 10% of 28, I get 2.8. So when you're doing 10% of something, you're moving the decimal 1 place to the left. So 10% of a number, you're going to move the decimal 1 place left. What did we do over here when it was 1%? When we did 1% of a number, we move the decimal 2 places left. Because 1% is really 1 out of 100. So we're doing 1/100th of something, dividing it by 100, moving 2 places to the left. So 10%, we're going to move 1 place to the left. So 1 place to the left here, we should get 23.4. So let's check it out. 10%, I'm going to write it as 1 over 10 times 234 over 1, multiply straight across, 234 over 10. If I'm dividing by 10, I'm going to move the decimal 1 place over. Let's show you that on here. Okay, 10% of 234, 23.4. So what about 10% of 85 hundredths? So we said you're going to move the decimal 1 place to the left. We should end up with 0.085. Let's just go right here. 10% of 0.85, 0.085. So 85 thousandths. If we wrote it out, 1/10 times 0.85, you can put the 0 there if you want, over 1. 0.85 over 10. If I did that as a division, 0.85 divided by 10. Same thing. So then finally this one, moving it 1 place to the left, I should get 0.586. 1/10 of 5.86 gives me 5.86 over 10. 5.86 divided by 10, 0.586. If I did 10% of 5.86, 0.586. So I get that on all of them.